Whenever you hear a band get softer or get more simplistic, become more radio friendly, you'll have people who will defend the change by saying that the band has grown or evolved. I feel like these people don't actually know what a band growing or evolving actually means. They should probably try looking up the definition of evolving. To me, for a band to grow or evolve, that means they are taking what they do and adding to it. And that brings us to Nemesis, which is not only my first ever Resident Evil game to play, Jill Valentine is awesome, but it's also the second album by the metal band Defecto. The first album was a little more straight ahead, normal metal, with some proggy elements, some experimental moments thrown in there, but there was a lot of straightforward, kind of 90s Metallica or a Judas Priest style metal in a way, without sounding like either of those bands. This album is a little different. It's a little less catchy than the first album, but it's also got a little bit more to it. There's a lot more guitar solos that I really enjoy on this album. There's a lot more to it musically that I find more interesting than the first album. And keep in mind, if you saw my review for the first album, I gave it a 7 out of 10, which for me is quite good. I did really enjoy that album. The guitars on this album are a little heavier. The vocalist has a little bit different style of voice. He uses his style from the first album a little bit on here, but at times he sounds a little bit raspier to me. I don't really notice that testament or sentenced sound in his voice except in a song or two on this album compared to the first album, which had that style in a few songs. The solos are developed a little bit better on this album, and I feel like they are the highlight of this album. They have two different guitar players playing them, so sometimes they'll rotate between the two guitar players during the solo. First time I'd really heard this was last year when I heard the band Santa Cruz for the first time. I noticed on their first two albums they kind of did a similar thing as far as I can tell, and that adds a cool dynamic to it because you get a little bit of different stylings going on within the same solo. If I had to complain about the solos at all, it would be that I wish they were longer. They're so good in most of these songs. I did say the album is a little less catchy. It's not that there aren't any hooks to be found on this album, it's just that they're not as obvious as the first album. And you're going to hear a lot of comparisons between these two albums. I thought I was going to do that more on the last album than I did, but I figured I should be talking about this one before I do that. The band also adds some new elements to their music, a few new styles, and expands on some of their other styles, which would actually be evolving. So let's go ahead and get into this. The album opens with a mini track, which I'm just going to ignore because it's a mini intro track. It leads into the first actual song, Nemesis, which is the first song I ever heard by this band. It's an up-tempo metal song. It starts off pretty cool with some guitars and drums kind of filling in and the guitar chords ringing out. And you got some strings playing in there, and there's this kind of frantic piano lick going on. It's pretty cool, and it leads into a kind of basic metal song with some strings kind of filling in here and there. It's got a nice sound to it overall. The standout for me on this song is the solo. I really like the sound of it. It's pretty cool and a very memorable solo. It's hard to find bands these days that have memorable solos, and this band has a few of them. I really like the sound on one of the guitars during, I believe it's the second to last part of the solo. It has a really cool guitar tone or effect on it. I really dig that. Overall, this is a really kick-ass song and a really nice way to start out the album and a good way to introduce the band. Endlessly Falling is next. This song has kind of a march-along beat to it. That's what I think of when I hear it. It's another heavier song. It's got kind of an interesting style to the chorus of it. I don't really have a whole lot to say about it except that it's a solid track. The solo has some cool melodies going on in it. This isn't one of my favorite songs, but it is quite good. I do really enjoy it whenever I listen to it. Savage is next. This one starts off with a little bit of a bluesy riff, so you can see, evolving a little bit, adding some new elements to what they do. This song, I feel like I've heard it before, the style to it. The first parts of the verse, the singer will sing by himself, and then the band will kind of kick in as kind of a filler towards the end of the vocal line and to get you to the next vocal line. That eventually changes and the music is playing full on during the verses. It's an okay song. I've only heard it a couple of times, but something about it I'm not really digging. I'm not sure what. I can't put my finger on it, but something about this song just doesn't work all that well for me. It's not bad at all. It's certainly better than listenable, but something about it just bugs me. I really don't know. It's still good in a way. The Nameless Apparition is next. This song has a groove to it. It's got a nice style going on. I've grown to like this song a little bit more as I keep listening to this album. The really standout part of this song, again, is the solo. It has one of my favorite solos on the album. I'm pretty sure this one is a definite switch between the two guitar players, as the first part of the solo has one sound on the guitar, and then you can hear a definite change to the other guitar player, as the second guitar has a completely different sound to it, which I really like that change. That dynamic that they added by having two guitar players do solos really shows off in this song. It also has a pretty cool bridge that I like a lot. It slows down, gets a little quieter. Overall, a very solid track. I do quite enjoy. That transitions into a song called The Sacrifice. This song is mostly piano and vocals, and then there are a lot of string instruments thrown in there. This song's okay. It has a really cool atmosphere to it. I like that the production on this song gives the vocals and the piano some room to breathe. It's not overly compressed like a lot of 2000s era music. But something about this song I can't really get into. I almost feel like it would be a little better either without the strings at all or only the strings used in certain points to add emphasis to certain parts of the song. Because I really enjoyed the first part of the song where it was just piano and vocals. But the song overall doesn't really do a whole lot for me. There's not a big change up. It feels like part to something that could grow to be something epic, but it never really does. And it's a pretty short track as well, which is actually really good considering how basic the song is. It's not bad by any means, but it didn't really have anything that really held my attention. And that song transitions to Ode to the Damned. I obviously think they could have cut out the Sacrifice and still had these two other tracks, The Nameless Apparition and this song, transition well between each other. The song starts out with a cool acoustic guitar section. It starts off pretty quiet, definitely melodic, and as it goes on, it gets a little bit louder, a little bit angrier as you start to hear a guitar lick kick in as the electric guitars start. And there's a nice build-up. You get this thunderous drum beat as the heavier guitar riffs start to kick in. The intro to this song, once the full band gets going, is very dark and has a very sinister sound, which you would imagine a song titled Ode to the Damned would have. It has a very metalcore, melodic death metal sound to it. It's really dark, really heavy. There's some really kick-ass guitar riffs going on. Something I don't talk about a whole lot is the drumming in this band. Not that it's bad, it's just kind of there for the most part, but I do really like the sound of the drums in the intro to this track. Really cool. The vocals during the verses kind of have a different tone and kind of take you a little bit out of that dark mood, which is a little unfortunate, but they're still solid nonetheless. And I feel like if he were to try to go dark with his vocals, that would probably lead to more growling, which I really don't want. They use the growls a little bit in this song, and they're done well enough. Like the last album, there are growls thrown into some of the vocals, but it's not really overbearing for the most part. For the most part, it's used to emphasize certain sections of the songs or used to play as a contrast to the clean vocals, which is how I prefer growling or harsh screaming type vocals. The song has nice verses, nice chorus. This is a really cool track. It definitely has its own feel to it. Definitely that dark, sinister feel to it. I really like the mood to the song. I kind of wish they could have played it up a little bit more, the darkness to it. But like I said before, I also wouldn't want him to go extra growly with it. And thankfully he doesn't do that. So after we get through that dark and brooding song, we get to a couple of tracks that are significantly lighter in tone. Gravity is the first of these two. It's up-tempo, it's kind of fast-paced, it's got a very bright sound to it, it's got a really cheerful sounding, catchy chorus. almost poppy in a way, but I don't mean that as an insult. It's just kind of how the song sounds to me. It's a really nice change after the last song. They really did well to put the two happiest sounding songs right after such a dark and dreary sounding song, which I love the dark and dreary, but it's nice to have a good contrast, and they do a good job here. Ablaze is next, and this one isn't quite as happy sounding as Gravity, but it's still got a pretty good up tempo feel going for it. This is a very solid track as well. There's not a whole lot for me to say about it. The standout sections for me are the bridge in the song, which is more melodic and really cool. They don't place the guitar solo in the middle, in between, say, the second chorus and the bridge, or in between the bridge and the third chorus. They cut that in at the end of the song, which is kind of interesting. And the bridge is really good. And after they go through the chorus for the last time, we actually get the guitar solo. And it's really cool. It's one of the better guitar solos on the album. It starts off really slow, and then the band kicks back in and it gets faster. It's got a good amount of emotion to it. I like it quite a bit. My only gripe is that they fade the song out. I would like to have heard the solo play out in its entirety. I would have been okay if they were worried about time for some reason. I would have been okay with them cutting the sacrifice just to get the rest of this solo in. And I can understand if they didn't quite know how to end the song, but that solo was so good, I really wanted the rest of it. Before the Veil is the next song. It's pretty up tempo, but it's got more of a groove to it. It starts off with a really kick ass riff. When I hear it, I think a little bit metal and a little bit rock. It's a really catchy guitar riff, and the verses have a really nice pace to them. And this is the first of two songs that I would say, if I had to pick a favorite chorus, it would either be the one on this song or the one on the next song, which we'll get to. I really like the chorus in this song a lot. The verses, like I said, are heavy, but then they shift to the chorus, which is very beautiful and melodic. The vocals during that chorus are really, really good. Some of my favorite vocals that this guy's done on the two albums. And the song shifts from heavy to acoustic, and it changes so seamlessly. Not only does it move from heavy to acoustic, but the pacing changes a lot too, and it works really, really well. This is definitely my favorite song on the album. I absolutely adore this song. It's got a nice enough solo to it. Not one of my standout favorite solos, but good enough. Easily my favorite song on the album, and possibly my favorite song the band has done. Where All the Enemy is next. Now, if you saw my review for the previous album, and then, of course, up until this point in this album's review, you'll know that I've said that they used the growls pretty tastefully. You get a little bit here and there to emphasize certain parts of songs, maybe a bridge on a song, you'll get some growls. For the most part, it's really well done. This song was kind of an eye opener for me. I like it, so don't get me wrong. When I talk about it with a little bit of negativity, I do actually quite enjoy this song. However, it was very much an eye opener when comparing this song to the rest of this album and the previous album. It's very much a metalcore, melodic death metal style song. It's very fast paced and heavy, which is cool. I enjoy that. The verses are all growling vocals. There's some melodic singing in the build up to the chorus. The chorus is fantastic, very melodic. I absolutely adore that. Like I said before, this song and then Before the Veil have my two favorite choruses on the album. That part of the song really saves it for me. And the solo is also pretty solid. Overall, it is a pretty decent track. I can't really complain about it too much. And I do like bands who do this style. Soilwork, Killswitch Engage, Demon Hunter, and the Unguided Sonic Syndicate. Those two are kind of intertwined. Kind of being amongst my favorites. I also enjoy Under Oath. There are a couple other bands I kind of enjoy, but Shadows Fall, I forgot about them. But this song was an eye-opener for me because I'm hearing that style of song mixed throughout a metal album with other styles in it, and it really opened my eyes to how the style of metal just isn't my favorite, which makes a lot of sense. I pretty much listed the bands that I really like that do that style. But when I look back on those bands, generally the songs that I like have really good choruses. The music is serviceable. There might be other sections that I really like, but the verses with this growling style just don't really do it a whole lot for me. It's cool for adding diversity. This song is done really well for this style. This would be a highlight on any metalcore melodic death metal band's album. I would say this song definitely stacks up with the best songs of any of those type bands' catalog. It's really good and really well done. Once I compare it to a little bit more prog or a little bit more normal style metal, the metalcore melodic death metal style, especially with the harsh vocals that are used predominantly during the verses, just not something I love all that much. And it's very formulaic, and the band do stick to that formula with this song. Again, they do it really well. It is a good song. It's just I don't like it as much when I hear it next to stuff that I like a lot more. Ascend to Heaven is the final track on the album. It's longer, it's a little more proggy. The first verse is piano and then singing, and then there's a chorus, which I don't know. I don't really like the song all that much, to be honest. It's okay. The chorus is kind of repetitive and very slow. The second verse is a little different, so at least there's some variety in it. The solo's just kind of there, and the song just kind of I can't really say it drags. It doesn't really feel like an eternity to get through or anything. It's not awful. This band hasn't done anything that I would say is awful, but this one just doesn't really do it for me. I'm not feeling it, and it's one I don't really listen to all that much. Kind of a disappointing way to end the album, which is otherwise pretty solid. So 2 albums in, and Defecto is 2 for 2, releasing 2 really good albums. I'm going to give this album a solid 8.5 out of 10. I think it's really good. I think it shows a lot of growth for the band. They add a few new elements. They change things up just a little bit, but yet they still keep on being a metal band. I think this band is a really solid new band, and I think everybody should check them out if you're a metal fan.